Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be invited to address this group. And I feel that I'm probably virtually the only non-Nigerian particularly honored to be in this group today. I don't feel it's my place to tell Nigerians what to do about a Nigerian problem, but what I can do is speak to some of my experience. I've worked over 20 years in the sanitation sector, and I've worked in numerous countries, including various different countries in Africa, including Ethiopia for 5 years, and I was in the regional office in Dakar for West Africa for 5 years. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback, so I think somebody needs to mute. And I've also worked in India on the Swachh Bharat program over there. So I've had lots of different experience in sanitation, and my understanding was that this the title of this discussion was about creative strategies for ending open defecation. Is that correct, Vicky?
Yes, yes.
So you want me to go ahead and speak now, or we're going to do introductions first?
Well, we have a large room. Whenever anyone begins to speak, they introduce themselves. That's how we normally go with this. So I think you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, so what I thought to address today is obviously, I think, you know, the Clean Nigeria campaign, and Mrs. Opara is leading that very ably and is doing a fantastic job. But realistically, the progress that we've seen on sanitation so far is only barely keeping up with population growth, because population growth is so rapid here. And if we're really going to address this, we need to be thinking out of the box in terms of really, as you say, in the title, creative solutions about how we can really address the issue to accelerate coverage and progress across the country. So I have 4 categories of suggestion, if you'll bear with me. And the very first one is about the last mile. And I would say, let's put the last first. So the example I always give is Bangladesh, which has been 99% open defecation free for about 10 years. And the 1% is all of the hard to reach areas. So they have obviously a big deltaic area. So they have a lot of high water table issues and flooding issues. They have in the north rocky areas. So they have this problem with very high, you know, challenging holes to dig in very rocky areas. So if we don't address those challenging areas now, with all the will in the world and all of the hard work, you know, and I hear this phrase low-hanging fruit a lot. It's obviously good to go and get the numbers with the low-hanging fruit, but if we don't address the challenging areas now, we are going to be in that same situation of still mopping up the coverage in all of the difficult places. And I think one area, particularly for Nigeria, is hard to reach populations and very impoverished populations. So particularly in remote rural areas where incomes are largely just self-sustaining in agricultural, people don't have a lot of spare cash. And the idea that they can suddenly afford to build a toilet is probably a bit ambitious if you're asking them to put concrete slabs and so on. So I think one thing that we really need to address is looking at affordability. So either very low cost options or some kind of smart subsidy. I know this goes against the overall CLTS policy in the country to subsidize, but I do feel that if we're going to address full coverage in the whole country, we have to be really thinking about how are the poorest going to have toilets. And so UNICEF is looking at this in a couple of different ways. So one thing is looking at vouchers. So in a program in our Northwest region that's supported by USAID, so that's in Zamfara, Sokoto, and Kebbi, we've been looking at using vouchers. It's not the full cost of the construction of a toilet, but it's a large contribution towards that. And the selection of the recipients of this have been supported using both the state registers for different vulnerabilities, but also community's own analysis. Once a community does a triggering process, often they self-identify individuals who are in their community who can't afford. So this is just a trial. We'll obviously be sharing the results, and we don't yet know how effective it is, but it's one way we feel that it's possible to increase the coverage in very poor areas. But I know also that historically UNICEF has done some work in the South, looking at high water table or you have to tank them very effectively, and all of this is expensive. So that's something to bear in mind as well, is that often solutions for challenging situations are more expensive than your average solution. So just something to think about. But anyway, so that was my first field of area. So it's putting the last mile first. And that includes, obviously, as I said, challenging situations and pro-poor financing mechanisms. So the second area that I want to talk about is private sector engagement. Now, I know that this is happening, but I do think it could happen much more. There is a huge amount of big companies in Nigeria and a lot of money in those companies. And I think they can be encouraged to give back to the country that has caused them to improve their wealth. So I think promotion to private sector companies about the challenges, and perhaps in the geographic areas where they're working, either working or they're from or located, would be very appropriate to really get further financial support for the program to cover some of the areas, for example, that I just mentioned. And there's two aspects to private sector. One is the funding side, but the other is the supply side. So behavior change, communication, and information and education can create demand, but it's no point creating demand if there is not a supply. And so encouraging local businesses to build toilets, to stock toilet products, it's not a very enticing business because it's low cost, it's not very high throughput, and I think we have to acknowledge that any company that's willing to do this has to have some kind of an incentive to really want to promote sanitation. So successful businesses that I have seen, UNICEF's been involved in marketing for some years now for sanitation, for example, in Bauchi. I've met toilet businesses, but they're a business anyway. They're doing, you know, concrete products, blocks, rings, concrete posts, all sorts of others, and the toilet slabs are just a small proportion of their market, and that seems to be the most realistic option, is that it cannot be a standalone business, but as part of an overall business model, it's possible to promote sanitation products. So I think encouraging further businesses in a way that really pushes sanitation products and makes them available to the whole of the population is something that's really important. Finally, I think another area that we really haven't looked at yet, and with the coverage that we're looking at the moment, perhaps people feel it's a bit premature, but I don't think it is looking at pit emptying and fecal sludge management. The cost of these large trucks to evacuate pits and then find somewhere safe and environmentally friendly disposal is a challenge. I often hear that the cost of pit emptying is more than even the cost of the toilet in some places, because it's so expensive and you wait a long time for them to come, and it's just not very efficient or effective. So I think supporting the promotion of this business as well is something that's really important. But also the treatment and the safe disposal is very important. And thinking of shit, if you'll excuse my language, as a business is important, because there is money to be made in this product. And it really is a possibility that it can be a very profitable concern if the volumes are right. So, so that's something to is more of a challenge, I think, bureaucratically speaking, and that is about intersectional collaboration. And I think there's a big problem that people think it's just an issue of the Ministry of Water or of the RUWASA, and it's not a problem for anybody else. But the truth is, everybody goes to the toilet, and everybody working in every ministry needs to have decent toilets. And everybody who attends a health center or attends a school or any other public place needs a toilet. If you're going to the church, if you're going to a market, if you're going to a motor park, any of these places, they all need safe, clean toilets. And people don't mind paying for this. And it's actually another way that businesses can be promoted. And I think this has been proven. UNICEF has set up several public-private partnerships in various different states where we've worked that are now very thriving businesses that people are coming and using and buying other products as well, and promoting sales of all sorts of things, just because they need to use the toilet, and everybody needs to use it. So it's not rocket science. And I know this is now happening in FCT, which is marvelous, because everybody thinks of Abuja as this very clean place, but you drive around Abuja, you always see someone somewhere in a ditch. And that's because there are no public toilets. So, so it's a problem, and it needs to be tackled. And I think the more that are created and the more that people see that it's actually a really quite a positive business model, hopefully that will expand. And but again, I think maybe people need a helping hand to get into this business. It's not an obvious area. So the other thing I would say is that all ministries need to think of it as their challenge too. So I would say particularly health, that the coverage of health centres is really very poor. I think it's only about 10% in the latest WASH norm. And we really need to be looking at how we can encourage health colleagues to be taking this more seriously. In particular, hand hygiene. I mean, it's known to save lives, and where is more important than when you have sick people or you're delivering a baby, that you need to practice hand hygiene. And then, of course, education in terms of the schools, but every ministry, wherever they're involved, roads, obviously we need public toilets in places on roads so that buses don't just stop on the highway somewhere and everybody finds a tree. And all of the different ministries need to take it on as their own business. And an area particularly I think is important to consider is housing, and particularly legislation around different sorts of housing and what sanitary facilities have to be in them. And particularly, I think one area that's a challenge is when you're renting housing and what the landlord is obliged to provide, and whether there is legal provision that he has to provide a toilet, because they certainly ought to, but whether that happens, I'm not absolutely sure. And I know it's been a big challenge in many countries is renting. So those are some of the areas, I think, in terms of intersectoral collaboration that we really need to think about. And then the third and possibly the most important one is around advocacy and communication. Sorry, the fourth point. I would say that it's a challenging topic for people to promote, because it's not very sexy, is it? Toilets and but we can make it fun, and we can, I mean, let's just make it a joke if that's what sells. Let's make it funny. I've seen some very inventive campaigns over the years, and one that I always remember that really targeted young people was the Poo to the Loo campaign in India, where they had some cute little cartoon videos and a great song about taking the poo to the loo, and it used all rude words like poo. And I think the kids loved it, and obviously that's targeting a certain demographic, but I think we really do need to engage children, young people, and get them involved with the campaign. UNICEF has already supported a couple of events called hackathons, where kids get together and they come up with some ideas around promoting sanitation. And we had a great song called No OD, which was sung in all the different languages, not all the different languages, but several different languages of Nigeria, which was marvelous. And I think more creative things like that we can really promote and get out there would be very helpful. I think using traditional channels, traditional leaders. I know that we've had some emirs and stuff getting involved with the promotion, and it's really been helpful. I think also religious leaders could be exploited is the wrong word, but mobilized more to really promote sanitation. And I think we need to, as I said, just get a bit creative and thinking out of the box about any other channels where there's a lot of public interest, sport, music, culture, how we can exploit these for, Nollywood. let's get it out there and get the promotion going. So I do feel that in terms of advocacy and communication, there's one last area that I want to mention, which is that there are some states with quite high ODF rates, as in not many people open defecating, particularly in the South. For example, in Bioye, I understand the coverage is quite high, but there is no kind of CLTS program as such. And so I think we need to be thinking about a different model of how we can promote sanitation coverage, but not go back to the basics when there is already high coverage. So I would say that would apply to a lot of cities where in the suburban areas, for example, most households already have toilets. So it's just a question of creating public toilets in those public areas that I already mentioned. So I think that obviously the support for public toilets in areas where many people gather is the most important thing in a setting like that. But I really think we need to think a little bit out of the box, out of the CLTS box, for areas where we already have high coverage. Now that really is low-hanging fruit. So with that, I'll stop there, and I'm sure that if there's any questions, my colleague Bioye can go into more detail, particularly on some of the issues I mentioned, like the businesses and the vouchers, the financing scheme. But I'll stop there. But thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you all, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jane. Can we see like maybe 2-3 hands up so she can answer these questions? Or there are questions in the box already? Let me check. Do we know how to put up our hands? Okay, we'll come back when you think of something to question later, so that Bioye can start speaking. Bioye, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you. I want to thank you for bringing us to this meeting. The chief of WASH section has said almost everything. I just want to add one or two. The first one is for us to look at the momentum at the federal level. We have a minister who is doing very well. We have a Clean Nigerian campaign and a secretariat that is coordinating all ODF acceleration plans. We also have this in some of the states, but we need to do more at the state level. Let's take, for example, a state like Jigawa, where the governor is allocating fund for accelerating ODF plans. This is unprecedented. Now, we also have Katsina. In Jigawa, at the moment, there are, out of the 27 LGAs, 22 have become ODF, Open Defecation Free certified. And they are working seriously on the remaining 5. In fact, Jigawa is likely to become the first ODF state before the end of this year. Not just because UNICEF is supporting, but because the governor himself, the government, the entire government is supporting the entire process. This is very good. Now, let's also look at Katsina. Katsina, is also planning to become ODF by December or early 2023. And the government is also putting money on the table for ODF acceleration processes. We don't find this in some other states. Out of 36 states, these are just 2. UNICEF has supported some states to develop a roadmap that shows what they want to do, how they want to become ODF, what the resources are required. But we need all states having this ODF roadmap. That's the only way you can support a state. And we're expecting that such a roadmap will be a very good tool for them to engage the private sector for support. I mean, you want to tell me to support your state, you don't have a plan. It's not possible. So we need to push for that. It also occurred to me that we've been talking about the federal government establishing what we call the National Sanitation Fund. This is a way of setting aside a certain amount of money, 200 million, 500 million, whatever they are able to support the states that are responsive. I mean, for example, if we have a state that has a plan to spend 200 million to become ODF, but has 190 million, federal government can use 10 million as an incentive for such a state. So we are expecting this to happen. So if a National Sanitation Fund is established by the federal government and channeled to states that are responsive, it must also be a room for competition. States might begin to compete with one another to access this fund. We think this is very, very important. And the last one I want to say is to continue from what Chief said concerning behavior change communication. I think we need to do more. In India, in Bangladesh, and even in Ghana, and also in Indonesia, they have engaged dignitaries, celebrities, the big guys who will talk and people will listen. We need to do more of that. We have very important personalities in all the states. I mean, for example, if somebody like you, that's Madam Vicky, gets to a public event and you start talking about the need for open education to hedge, people will listen to you. You have your own platform. So we need to do more of this. And it might also mean that we need to come up with messages in different indigenous languages that people will hear their own language, they will understand. And this will also involve engaging media, the print media, the electronic media. Everybody will be on the move to push Nigeria to become ODF. If we do this, and coupled with what Chief said concerning intersectoral collaboration, all the ministries coming together, not just the education, not just the health, the women affairs, budget and planning, everybody has a little plan, no matter how little it is, to support the ODF plan. And lastly, Chief was talking about having appropriate technological options, latrine options for different soil formations. This is very, very important. I know there was a time the minister talked about having a catalog of latrine options. UNICEF developed one, which is good enough, but we need to do more of that. We need to have a very large catalog that that showcases latrine options for different places where we have loose soil formation in Jigawa, for example. There are local use of local materials for that. Where we have water table, we also need to look at how do we attend to that. In places that are flood prone, we need to also come up with different options. So this is very important. It should not be like a national strategy to address sanitation in different soil formations. I know that we've got the National ODF protocol reviewed to ensure that we start moving towards the SDG, and to ensure that when an LGA or community say they are ODF and they are certified ODF, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line, they still remain ODF to sustain the status of ODF. So we need to also revisit this and to see how each of the states in Nigeria begins to move towards this. And lastly, I wouldn't want to stop without talking about what's happening in FCT. Through the support we got from Legal, UNICEF is working in Kwali, and out of the 10 wards in Kwali, 8 have now been, we are intervening in 8, and we are moving into remaining 2 wards. We are working with the FCT RUWASA, and I'm happy Madam Aisha is here, the Director of Sanitation. So we want to do more. The minister wants, out of the 6 area councils, the minister will be happy to have 4 certified by December. UNICEF is willing to support one more LGA, but it's going to be a tawdry, except the government itself put some money on the table. I know they are willing to engage the private sector, but the private sector also want to see what is it that the government is doing. And as Chief said, we need to ensure there's an enabling environment for the small and medium enterprises to come more. When they sniff money, they want to invest, they also want to make money. So there's a need for this enabling environment to be created by the government. Thank you very much. I'll be ready to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bioye. Wow, I feel like I'm full from all the information. Thank you so much. And yet there's still some more to do, but we will pick the suggestions and questions at the end. Usually at the end of every session, we always come up with suggested ideas that we send to government or send to implementers and so on. So let's be thinking what suggestions we might, based on what we're hearing and what we already know, what suggestions we can harvest out of these conversations to funnel to government or to funders and implementers. Thank you so much, Bioye. Ms. Opara, Alpha.
Hello.
Yes, we got you. So
yeah.
Now, can you enable your video, please?
Yes. It's there.
Okay. There you are. Okay. Thank you for coming in. I know that you are multitasking today. So we're very appreciative that you could join. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm really happy to be part of this. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are. I'm talking from the angle of the Clean Nigeria Youth campaign. Now, the chief has actually spoken a whole lot, and Bioye as well has actually said a whole lot in terms of what is really happening with the campaign in Nigeria. Now, I actually must really say that the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, has actually been the push that we have for Nigeria in terms of ending open defecation in Nigeria. We are today because of his passion, because of his vision. And we're happy that in 2019, we were able to flag off the campaign to end open defecation in Nigeria by 2025. And prior to that, there had been a document, the roadmap to end open defecation in Nigeria by 2025, which actually nothing, little or nothing was done until we flagged off this campaign. And having already an existing document, it was necessary that let's begin to fly with that document and let's begin to see how we can actually operationalize the roadmap to end open defecation. And that was where our journey started, with the flag off of the campaign on the 19th of November by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshebanjo. And the executive order was also signed by the president. So looking in that direction, I would say that for the first time, we're having that high level political will for sanitation in Nigeria, which had not actually been what it is today. And part of the what was agreed or from the Federal Executive Council, we actually got that approval to carry out this robust campaign and to see that we mobilize the entire country to end open defecation within the target date of 2025. And immediately after that, most states also began to flag off the campaign. But the question we would all ask, is it enough flagging of the campaign? And just like my other counterparts have said, even if you need the support and you don't have a plan, how do you get supported? And that was where the journey started, and there have been a whole lot of support from our partners. In fact, we have low-hanging fruit that we talk about today is because of some of the works that have been done by most of our partners, particularly UNICEF, under the Sanitation or Hygiene and Water for All program, which had, in fact, 2 phases, and a lot of these states benefited from that. And we see them like riding behind the back. And some of what we see today where states are actually moving is because of some of these structures that were actually put in place, and they seem to be running with it, that understanding is there. So ensuring that every state actually come on board becomes quite key. So the first thing was to ensure, let us flag off this campaign. And to do that, We also have for the campaign, we look at 5 different thematic areas. And after that flag off, there was also the steering committee. Now, it was necessary to put in a steering committee in place to actually, provide that oversight function and then, advise the campaign. And that committee is headed by the Vice President himself, Professor Yomi Oshibanjo. We have had 3 meetings with him now. And just like what Chief was talking about in terms of MDAs, with the head of service on board and a host of all other ministries coming on board, that committee has actually also put some of the MDAs on their toes. And that is why we look at the fact that we need a whole lot of collaboration, partnership, working together to see that we actually achieve this great feat that is before us. Now, we also have pushed that again to the states. You need to set up a committee. You need to no longer work in silos. We need all of us to work together. And so the 5 thematic areas we have, and these are the 5 thematic areas that we report on each time we have a meeting, to discuss with the Vice President. We have the one of them, which is policy and coordination, advocacy, communication, program implementation, M&E, and then fund mobilization. And then looking at all these thematic areas, we ensure that we actually see how, we can handhold states and then push to see that we actually get doing something. And then to also ensure that most of the states are actually keen in, particularly where there have been the presence of donor partners. Most of those states, Jigawa, Katsina, we're happy that Jigawa is actually giving that breakthrough of having at least the first state in maybe in a few couple of months now to have a state being declared open defecation free. And we want to see a campaign where there is a lot of competition. For now, we still see it, a lot of people still look at, we have 78 local governments that are open defecation free, but does it cut across all the states? No, it cuts across just 12 states. So the other 24 states, what are we doing? How do we get everyone on board, and including FCT? But just like Mr. Bioye have said, there's work that is going on in the FCT. And in fact, the last groundbreaking ceremony that was held, where the Minister of FCT, Minister of State, actually, made some statements where, being the WASH ambassador as well, there are going to be 10,000 toilets to be constructed on the PPP arrangement basis. These are also, stories and success stories that we believe that other states should also see and begin to run with. So looking at the area of communication, Bioye has also talked about that. The Secretariat just recently also engaged a communication person to see how we can actually have more of the buzz in the air, because a lot is not just about the facilities. It's also about the behavioral change. So mounting that kind of campaign, a behavioral change campaign, where people actually understand the need, why they must use toilets and why we need to build toilets, I think is quite key for this campaign. And in terms of coordination, we're also looking at what we have also done in that aspect, is that from the angle of the Secretariat, we have actually, had meetings with states to see how we can actually have a closer relationship with the states, and then have also relationship with the local governments where the action is. And once we continue to campaign for, what we continue to advocate for, is to see where there is a buy-in of the high-level political leaders. And once our political leaders take charge, we see that the work is easier. Just again, like what is happening in some of the states like Jigawa, where the state governor is actually driving it. And if we can have that in all of the states across, the 36 states and the FCT, you will see that the campaign will actually move faster, and there will be more buy-in, and then that is when we can actually begin to see more of private sector commitment to the campaign. But I know that we will get there. Now, incidentally, what did we do differently this year? Early this year, we now had to call for a retreat with all the states, and particularly the local government honorable commissioners, to be present in that meeting. And what we would try to identify were, what are the gaps? Where are the issues? What do we need to do better? And all this is as a result of trying to see how we can, push this campaign to the level where it begins to, yield more local governments come out as open defecation free. Now, shortly after the retreat, an outcome of one of the major outcomes of the retreat is holding zonal reviews with states. And the first one is actually holding in Delta. I had to move away from the meeting venue to actually join this meeting. And we see a whole lot of most states now understanding it, because we need to, see how we can, get closer and closer, and then see how we can push this message. And I am happy because the reports of this workshop that is ongoing is also something that will be shared, and everybody will actually see, some of these issues, just like what has actually been spoken about here, talking about challenges with the toilets in terms of challenging soils and all that. We actually also need to begin to see some of these studies and begin to pilot some of them, because I also know that UNICEF has also supported, in looking at the issue of high water table and what technologies can actually be applied in these areas. So states now have to take up some of these things, begin to pilot, and then begin to see how these can actually be applied to actually ensure that some of these are easy. And just like we said, like the topic of this meeting implies, we're looking at the creative strategies, approaches to ensure eradication of open defecation. And what approaches have we been using? We're looking at community-led social sanitation, hygiene promotion, the market-based approach. How do we, get out a real supply chain and at the same time promoting the business of sanitation? And of course, the research. Research cannot be ruled out, because in looking at some of these areas that have difficult terrain, there is a tendency that we must actually look into these issues. And these are some of the things that Chief has actually, talked about, looking at the fact that you need to understand that if we just continue to run with places where there are not much issues in terms of, challenges, we'll get stuck and at a situation where now these ones with difficult terrains and all that would not be able to. So again, we are looking in that direction. How can we see that? And then the local government, everything is happening down there, but the local governments don't feel this campaign. I got that feeling even from this meeting, and a whole lot of the local government, because at the local government level, we have environmental health officers. And looking at the executive order 009 for this campaign, which is talking about enforcement agencies, we have the environmental health officers across, the local governments, across the 774 local governments. You have the presence. That is where they exist. Yes, we know that they are not enough, but even the few that are there, how much work are they doing? It pains me so much to even see that in the course of this meeting, some of them are not even aware that there is an executive order. So again, it means that we must take sensitization down as far as we can go to see that everybody comes on board, everybody buys into it, everybody is talking about it, everybody is feeling that there is a campaign on board. And the discussions here are working in that direction. Now we talk about filling stations, we talk about markets, we talk about motor parks. Are they part of it? Do they understand that there is a campaign? Are they feeling it? How about our traditional rulers? How about our religious leaders? These are some of the issues that we are bringing to the table here. How do we engage? We said it must be a movement. And to be a movement, it means that everybody must be on board. Everybody must know about it. Everybody must talk about it. We must work together to see how we can ensure that this target date, at least even if we don't get all the local government out, at least majority would have actually been able to, achieve the status of ending defecation. So these are a whole lot of, issues that we have been working on, and we'll see how, these can actually help to address it. And then remember, Mr. Bioye also talked about the issue of funding. Is something that is still within the discussions are still around that to see how that can actually happen. And that is also something that is going to help the campaign, because when there is a pool where one can actually draw from and states also begin to compete for that fund, I think it's also something, because we also see that happening where we have partners or grants, then you see how states are challenged and are more interested and willing to actually do whatever it takes to see attract that. So the issue of that pool fund is also something that I believe that by the time it comes on board, states are actually going to be, also working to see that some of that actually comes back to their state. But more importantly, we're also looking at the states actually taking up the challenge and actually providing some fund to see that they can actually, move this campaign to the next level. Again, there are some other, strategies that are also ongoing. Marketing strategies where we have microfinance institutions and all that coming on board. And some states are actually willing even to provide the pool funding that is necessary for this construction of improved toilets. So part of what the Secretariat is also looking at as part of our plan this year, while ensuring that we actually support some of the low-hanging fruits, we're also of the opinion to see how each state should be able to have at least one local government open defecation, free. And that will be a level playing ground where everybody will now begin to accelerate and move up the ladder from there to see how they can now get more local governments open defecation free. We have started something like that in Oyo State, and that is also already yielding a whole lot of results there. No, it's not a donor-funded program. We also have Ogun State, we have Imo State, and a whole lot of that. Now they are understanding the strategy, they are understanding how the whole thing works, and then with that they will now actually begin to accelerate and then get more local governments to become open defecation free. So we're actually looking at a whole lot in that direction, and of course engagement of private sector. See how more private organizations can come on board to give support to this campaign, bearing in mind as well that there is an organized private sector in the WASH sector. So how we can actually, get that more coordinated, and then we see that we have more private organizations being interested in this campaign and be able to support. While here as well, because of our discussions, we have also talked about states also not even knowing that the people that they should reach out to in terms of collaboration. There are a whole lot. So this review meeting is actually going to help a lot in that some of the states are now getting more aware and then getting to understand a whole lot that they should have been doing. Yes, we have started this, and there is something that we hope that we will continue to see that every state actually come on board. Every state has a working plan. Every state has a budgeted plan. Every state is actually putting in something, and then you stretch your hand and then you can get help. So that is the way to go to see that we actually move this campaign and achieve results within the shortest possible time. So I wish to thank you for this opportunity to be part of this. And I look forward to questions. I have another meeting before I run out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. I do realize we have put you under pressure to do this. Thank you. I'm very appreciative. As you guys are speaking, my mind is going, what should we do next? So thank you so much for this. And if we have questions, there are some questions actually, but we're going to go on and just finish our speaker. We'll come back to the questions. But if you have a burning question for Mrs. Opara, she has to go back to her meeting. So then put the question in the chat box and then we can have her answer that. But while we're getting ready to get the questions, we are going to ask Dr. Bolu to start her own speech, or is it a presentation? Okay, Bolu, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Vicky, for this opportunity and bringing together stakeholders to talk about this very, very important issue, how to move Nigeria forward in terms of open defecation free status, as well as access to basic sanitation. In addition to other colleagues that are online, I'm glad to see some of my former UNICEF colleagues and also to see some of my partners, particularly engineer Aminu, Dayyabu, my former partner. Great to see you all here. And my presentation will, in a way, give evidence-based data to back some of the things that the other colleagues have spoken about. And I believe I would also still share some other things that have not been touched on. I thought that to look forward, we also need to look backwards. So just a minute. To look forward, we also need to look backwards. And I thought if we could have a journey, a map of a journey, maybe from 2008 to 2022, a kind of timeline, and look at some of the strategies that had been used then. It would help us in this discussion. International Year of Sanitation, many of our colleagues would remember this, was in 2008. And one of the things that it achieved, which has been identified as a very important strategy, is that it brought together different sectors and was able to raise the importance of sanitation, not just within the wash sector. This was done globally, nationally, and locally. In 2008, we had the first ODF community, which was in Zamfara, Kadadaba, and the focus was on attaining open defecation free status, but also the use of toilets. In 2015, I think it was 2015, the National Council of Water Resources adopted a motion to declare Nigeria open defecation free by 2025. In 2016, I see that United Purpose, Mr. Namped is online. I think it was in 2016 when we had the first ODF LGA in Cross River State. So we are identifying the political will, we're identifying the area-wide planning. Then in 2017, the ODF Total Sanitation Protocol was reviewed based on data that had been generated through the SEAN program, which was looking at the time period between when a community is triggered, when the community is certified, and looking at slippage. Then in 2019, we had the Clean Nigeria campaign launch, and also the resolution which Mrs. Opara has referred to, where even higher political will was obtained. And now in 2022, we have 78 LGAs, which is massive progress. However, you know, if we look at this, we still have a long way to go, because it's basically 10% of the LGAs in Nigeria that has achieved an open defecation free status. So, Madam Vicky convening this meeting to look at creative strategies is really a valuable call. So what are we doing right? Very quickly, highest level political will. We've also got the lead agency. We've got Federal Ministry of Water Resources. Clearly, we've got the Clean Nigerian campaign, Mrs. Opara leading that very ably. We've got an agreed protocol. We've got sectoral partnerships. We've got the entrepreneurial aspect, the toilet-based associations. We've got sanitation, marketing. However, data, this is from the GMP 2017 and 2021, data shows us that we are not doing as well as we should. I looked at Bangladesh, I looked at India. As you know, I have worked in Bangladesh, though they had achieved the open defecation free status before I joined them in 2015. I was there for like 4 years. And if we look at this, at the percentage decrease, if we look between, at the case of Nigeria, if we look between 2015 and 2020, we've had a 10% decrease. And between 2000 to 2020, we've had a 27% decrease. So we've achieved more between 2015 and 2020, you know, thanks to the political will, Clean Nigeria campaign, work by our state RUWASAs like Katsina, like Jigawa. Now compare that to Bangladesh, where between 2015 and 2020, we had a 78% decrease compared to the 10% decrease that we have in Nigeria. And then looking at India, we had a 48% decrease in open defecation status. I did that also for access to basic sanitation, the percentage increase. And if you compare, for example, Nigeria's decrease between oh, sorry. I'm not sure if you're seeing the meeting controls. It keeps on popping up. If you compare Nigeria's progress and so Nigeria, 13% between 2015 and 2020. India, 25%. Bangladesh, 15% in terms of access to basic sanitation. And then you would see that we must accelerate and do it sustainably. Not sure why my computer is just not obeying me. Okay. Now, some areas that we need to improve on. Data, Mrs. Opara talked about operational research. Slippage, sustainability, what are some communities doing better? What are some states doing better? Then political priorities. Mrs. Opara spoke from the heart, you know, about the fact that everybody needs to be on board. And that is for sure, without a doubt. However, I believe that within the sector, we have not been doing so greatly about incentivizing, motivating, speaking the political language and using the highest level of political will that we have. You know, in Nigeria currently, issues of security, issues of youth unemployment are concerns across the board. Do we have the data? Do we have the platforms to actually engage stakeholders who are really busy? and demonstrates the importance of attaining open defecation-free status or sanitation to creating jobs. We haven't done that so well, and we need to get better at that. The leveraging across sectors. Jane referred to this. I want to build on that. What we have done traditionally in WASH is that we have used WASH funds to implement, in schools, to implement in health facilities, and we haven't gone very far. I think in education currently we have about 13% of schools that have access to basic sanitation and water. And this is, I believe, the core reason. When I was in Bangladesh, I worked with my health colleague in UNICEF. And one of the things I said is that we will not use WASH money to build WASH facilities in health facilities. We've got to be able to sensitize, make government in health aware of the importance. And at the ministerial level, health took this up and ran with it to develop a WASH in health strategy and put their funds to actually implement. I think we've got to, do this better. Then the issue of innovative partnership, which Mrs. Opara also referred to, is really important. I think that if during this few minutes of presentation, you don't remember anything else that I have said, I think this is the core for me. In terms of we have motivated, we have sensitized people about sanitation in, we haven't done it in a demand responsive way. We have also done it from the outside in. However, if we can actually engage the market women, the transport associations in a way that they understand that when we come in with a sanitation project, an ODF project, it's going to be about jobs, it's going to engage their youth, it's going to, then they themselves will actually really come up with creative strategies to ensure that we have open defecation-free LGAs across the board, and will be able to move faster. So some of the keywords: acceleration, sustainability, visibility outside WASH, political priorities, and then use of donor funding for leveraging and for replication. Sean has been referred to, and maybe I'll get to that. This is just on a lighter note. There's a WhatsApp platform for my estate, and I asked them, as part of my preparing for this talk, I asked, dear neighbors, can anyone please tell me what they know of the Clean Nigeria campaign or Open Defecation Free campaign? And this was the response. Outside WASH, the ordinary person on the streets, they don't really know much about what we are aiming to do or why we are aiming to do this. In terms of incentivizing people, getting people involved, we've also got to, tie it in with the circular economy, and this also depends on data. This is from the JMP. It says that Nigeria is one of the countries where at least 60% of our sanitation wastes is neither emptied in situ or disposed of, outside the facilities properly. So this is basically saying that we need to learn from the past to actually move forward, because in my view, some of the things that we have been saying during this meeting, multi-sectoral, intersectoral, replication, they are the things that we knew and we really need to implement them. So this is Kadadaba in Zamfara, the first ODF community in Nigeria. And a case study was done around it. And some of the key things there were issues around sustainability, replication and expansion, and the entrepreneurial aspect. And I'm glad that the CNC Secretariat is looking at the issues of implementing toilet-based associations. Jane talked about being pro-poor, and I really want to emphasize that as well. Targeting the hard to reach. We've got to speak the political language. Insecurity is a challenge in Nigeria presently. The issues of equity. This is a framework from GSEF. It's a Swiss-based organization working in Nigeria through ActionAid. And they have identified that lack of access to basic services is an issue, is one of the contributors to the insecurity that we're facing. But when we're talking about sanitation, we talk about it from the health perspective, we talk about it from the financial perspective, but we don't talk about it enough from the insecurity perspective. And the take-home point from here is that we cannot achieve global security, national security, without human security, which ODF is about. So the point I'm making here is that we've got to be able to talk the political talk with data and in the right platforms. Most of what we do is within WASH, but there are platforms for advocacy. We need to identify those platforms and speak the same language in those platforms. Sanitation for equity, these are some of the data from the WASH norm, which really shows that in terms of wealth, in terms of education, in terms of disability, in terms of gender, the open defecation status is higher in the poorest. It's higher, open defecation status, yes, it's higher in the poorest. It's higher in the non-educated households and those kind of. So sanitation for equity, we need to target the disparities. In 2020, we, Wash Matter initiatives had what it calls hard talks. And some of the state RUWASAs, Benue, Plateau, Katsina, were part of this. And some of the things that we asked then, I've put them on the screen, but I want to emphasize the review of the sanitation, of the ODF protocol. This is Opara has highlighted here that it has been reviewed. I haven't looked at it. I have a copy of it. I haven't looked at it, but I really want to emphasize that it's important that if we have only reached 10% of LGAs, even though it's a major upward trajectory, by 2022, we need to review the way we have stuck to the CLTS mantra. We really need to review it. I think that's the most important part of the review of the protocol. Another important part, in my opinion, and people say humble opinion, I'll say that as well. In my experienced opinion, is that we've got to reprogram the funds. You know, CLTS came in on the grounds of that facility, we won't use money to build toilets, that kind of thing. But the money that we use to pay people external to the community is really high. We need to switch that to ensure that some of the funds that we pay the facilitators actually go into the community. I have experience doing this. I have written evidence-based research for Water Research Commission and we came up with an implementation protocol. The money has to go back to the communities, and this is a way that we can actually incentivize, motivate, and work with all the stakeholders that we need to work with. I think this is my last slide. I thank you for listening. It is pertinent to note that 4 out of the 5 states that are leading in the ODF LGA status were SHON supported. We need to look at how donor funds were used on the SHON project to actually reach out to other states that were not within the SHON project, but also to set the framework for accelerating sanitation. I'm really proud of my former partners, engineer Aminu Dayyabu, who will, I'm sure, tell us in more details how they have done this, and other colleagues. So basically, we need to go back to that issue of thinking globally. That is, nationally at the state level, but we need to act locally. Motivate and incentivize stakeholders, and in this, I'm talking about the private sector and the community. Private sector, circular economy, what is the benefit to them? The community, where are the jobs? Show relevance to political priorities. Review the sanitation protocol inclusively. Let's not just limit it to the National Sanitation Task Group. If we're looking for ideas, we've got to bring in, more people. Leveraging domestic resources and replication. This was one of the ways that SHON really moved forward, where if funds were going to be given to a particular state, education also had to put their money in it. If we're going to build WASH in schools, education needs to say, yes, we will also put money for 5 WASH for 5 schools as well. And then lastly, but not the least, we've got to partner outside WASH. Thank you. These are my thoughts on this matter. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bolu. I think we should have made this a 3-hour thing. There's so much information coming out. Thank you. And now we are going to switch on to Engineer Dayyabu, who we've all been talking about you know, bringing it to the ground level. He is at the ground level, and he has been achieving some significant successes. So we're here. We're going to switch on now to Engineer Dayyabu. So Barry, do the needful. Thank you.
Good afternoon, all. Unfortunately, Engineer Aminu is not on seat, but I'm standing in for him. My name is Geologist Aminu Tukur, and I'm the Director, Water Supply and Sanitation Department here in Katsina, RUWASA. So okay. I would just like to add a little to what Madam Opara talked about, inclusion of all stakeholders, and also a little bit later on what Dr. Bolu talked about on the ODF protocol. So you see here, I think the key word is synergy. Here in Katsina, part of the strategy we used so that we don't get a situation whereby the people in the market, don't, or other stakeholders don't know what is happening, is the constitution of an LGA-wide stakeholders forum. So this stakeholders forum is inclusive of almost everybody in the local government, all sectors, from the market to the motor parks, the education, the religious leaders, also the traditional institution also. And also we use that, that stakeholders forum in generation of adequate funds for the construction of latrines, especially for the downtrodden people in the communities. And also we also include the involvement of these CBOs for mobilization. So with respect to that, also the direct involvement of traditional and religious institutions has really played a very, very vital role in getting Katsina State open, having 24 local governments becoming open defecation free. This is most especially done in a sort of TOT approach, e.g., first of all, the emir is involved, he is enlightened, he's sensitized, and he's part of a lot of meetings which we conduct. We go to the emirs, the two emirs of Katsina and also Daura, which they call all their district heads and inform them and give directives to them. So that when those district heads go back to their communities, they also call their village heads and also give them the same message which we have given right to the emir. So these village heads now go and call all their ward heads and also give them the same message. And this message, the ward heads now go back to the communities and also give these messages. So in that way, everybody is also carried along. Also, you see, concerning the ODF, we sort of modify and improve on the processes stipulated in the National ODF Certification Protocol to suit our states and LGS and also our communities. We come up with a sort of approach, which we call spot and fix immediately. That is, when you see a problem, you don't leave that community or you don't leave that house or area until that problem is fixed. If it's a person that does not have a toilet in his house, we don't leave that house until the person begins to dig that toilet. So also from the part of the local government, you see there are some bylaws. So the signing of these bylaws on OD makes it mandatory for each household to have and use the toilet. So here what happens is that the local government chairman makes a public pronouncement banning OD. And from there, the security outfits and judges will then be using to prosecute any defaulter. So you see, most of these things, it boils down to one, commitment and political will. So also another strategy, or we can say a platform that has really helped Katsina State, you see the establishment of this water, sanitation and hygiene departments by law across the 34 local governments in Katsina State since the year 2008. This has really given us a good playing ground whereby our messages can go directly to this local governments And each of these local governments, they have ward in charges for each of the wards in the local government area. So this has really assisted Katsina State RUWASA in getting messages across right to the grassroots. Also the ODF roadmap. We have a ODF roadmap captioned making Katsina State open defecation free by 2025. So which you also follow. So these are part of the things that I can just maybe add. And also importantly is out of the 24 local governments that Katsina State has as ODF. So I would like to tell you that Mashi, Dusi, Bindawa, and Danja, that is 4 local governments. They are out of the share. They were never part of any donor agency intervention. So you see, if the commitment is there, I believe we can get there. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, thank you. I think that, you know, I like the thing I like most about what you said there was fixing the problem on the spot once you spotted the problem and not going back to then go and make, you know, make policies and whatnot, and then it doesn't get done. And that kind of like what's Jane's idea of us dealing directly and all of that. Thank you so much. Now let's take questions and comments, and then we can come to a resolution or something. So, you know, if you have questions or comments on everything you've heard so far, can we see hands up? We have mostly professionals on this meeting today. So can we see hands up, please? And then let's contribute. Let's contribute.
Yes, but I have one hand already.
Okay.
From Israel, the hand is up.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, madam. My name is Tommy. My questions few, and it borders on when we talk of open defecation. I think 2 or 3 of the speakers have mentioned some states in the north. I think Jigawa specifically that has been declared open defecation free. Are we looking at only human wastes or inclusive of animal wastes? To say that we don't have hen walking the streets, dog walking the streets, cattle walking the streets and littering with their dogs and stuff like that? That's my question number 1. My question number 2, one of the speakers also mentioned what they are doing in Kwale in Abuja. And I know that that community has pipe-borne water. Probably because of time, he did not mention to us specifically or details of what intervention they are doing, because I know that to achieve open defecation-free community without water is a huge task. And my last question goes to all the speakers, because I noted that none of them talked about involvement of NGOs in achieving this. I know a couple of NGOs that work in part of Mushin, part of in Lagos, and they have done things remarkable to get some communities, at least provide toilets and advocacy, enlightenment, and they're doing quite well, at least raising funds individually, and they're doing something. I don't know if there are windows of opportunities to NGOs. Thank you.
Okay, who wants to take the question?
If I may come in, since Mr. Opara is not around, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, the interventions generally are in phases. And the first phase at the moment is ending open defecation. It's human waste, the human excreta. That's what we are looking at. Okay, but the second phase also is to move the communities to become total sanitation So now, if you look at the new protocol, we have what we have, sustainable total sanitation stage. And when a community or an LGA is now certified ODF, free of human excreta being in the open, now it begins to now move towards the waste, looking at waste management, looking at cow dung, animal dung, and looking at the environment generally. And that is what moves our community to become a total sanitation community. So that's the second stage, which is very, very important, but that's not where we have. So when we talk about Jigawa, we talk about Katsina, we are looking at human waste, human excreta generally. For Kwali, the support we give to Kwali is purely sanitation, but we're also looking into the water point, and we've got a number of partners who are interested in doing that. We are working on that. I totally agree with you that we can't be talking about total sanitation, we can't be talking about open defecation without looking into water, especially if we want people to practice a proper hand washing, which is part of ODF certification. So we are looking at that, and it's something that is very important, very paramount. Now, working with NGO. It's very important. You work with the private sector, work with the society. We have Newsan. I don't know if Newsan is part of this meeting. We also have Wash Matter. So working with a number of NGOs across the country, it's a major focus for us in UNICEF. And I also know that the Clean Nigeria campaign engages NGOs in everything they do. So you are right. It's very important, and we focus on that too. Thank you very much. Over.
Oh, thank you so much, Bioye. Okay.
I'd like to add to that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I wanted to add to what Bey has said about the NGOs, just to give a practical recent discussion. I lead Wash Matter initiatives, and I've had a discussion with Ms. Aisha, who is heading sanitation in FCT RUWASA, that some funding that we got from the private sector, that is Wash Matter, got from the private sector to rehabilitate water points in FCT. We want to use some of that in Kwali as an example of this method of incentivizing. So it will be incentivizing. Kwali is working on reducing open defecation status. And so we want to support them by bringing the water in. And just on this point, sorry, sometimes we are always looking externally. Government do this, UNICEF do that. If even as private citizens, we say, actually, I have 600,000, or this friend of mine and I, we put some funds together and say we want to make a difference. It will help. It will help. So thank you. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Bolu. All right. So we have Engineer Osalade. Engineer Osalade.
Good afternoon, ma.
Yes, so
good afternoon, ma.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be part of this good attending today meeting. God bless you, ma. My question is about the open defecation, especially the strategy that we are using. And most of the strategy, by my experience in the water sector, the water and sanitation sector for some time now, is that rural component, sector and the urban and the small town sector, the approach provides for many reasons can be effectively used to ensure that we have open defecation in those areas. But looking at the urban, are we going to use the same approach we are using in the rural and the urban and the small town to also achieve open defecation? Urban sanitation is not about having one house, one toilet. I don't think that can actually work in urban setting. So what is the best approach that we can actually deploy in the urban specifically to achieve open defecation in the urban? Number one, that is one question I want to ask. The second question is that, you know, when we talk about management of open defecation in the urban and small town, we have RUWASA looking at the rural components. We also have small town agency where they are applicable in state, looking at that. But in the urban, who are those people specifically looking at sanitation in terms of physical sludge or something in the urban? When you talk about some of the state by experience, Minister of Environment will tell you they're in charge of the environment. But I think sanitation in terms of open defecation we are talking about is go beyond the solid waste, the solid waste that Minister of Environment handles. So who are those people, who are the relevant agencies that are supposed to be in charge of the urban sanitation itself? You know, most of the, for example, in our state, Ekiti State, our local government there are some of the local government that also have urban setting in their local government. Are they going to be those people in the local government again, also looking at what they are doing in the urban? So those are the things, the challenges that we have. Is the environmental officers, health officers that we are using at the local government and at the small town, are they going to be the one also that we are going to be using to achieve open defecation in the urban? And for us as a state, for example, you know, we don't have, our water corporation is just evolving now. Water corporation is evolving to take up the responsibility of sewerage system. As a matter of fact, we cannot deceive ourselves. We are not up there in terms of even giving out good water, quality water to our people or to cover everybody, not to talk of sewerage system. So if you are not looking at water corporation, for example, the urban water corporation to look at that, who are those people that we'll be looking at and we'll channel our effort to, so that we can achieve open defecation in the totality? Because open defecation, by my understanding, is not only limited to rural or small town. It's also urban inclusive. So, for example, in Ekiti State, Ado is the state capital. If you are aware, Ado is the state capital. There are a lot of challenges. How do we solve the problem of the urban? What approach can we use? Those are my challenges. Thank you. I'm Engineer Shalade, the head of regulatory agency in Ekiti State's water sector. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to take this on?
I could have a stab at it.
Good.
Okay, so Jane wants to speak a little bit about this. Yes, please.
Thank you. So I think you're absolutely right that urban is one of the bigger challenges, and there's several aspects to it. I mean, there is large-scale sewage disposal, which is beyond the realm of your average environmental health officer, except to regulate that and monitor it, and which needs to be looked at, you know, in terms of the overall urban planning. And then the second is, of course, on site, where it's possible, where there's space, and if you're looking at on-site toilets, then you need to be looking at disposal. And so disposal is the biggest issue. But I think I mentioned before that I feel that in urban settings, particularly established urban settings where most households already have toilets, the biggest area is the public places and the institutions. And I would say that that is the best place to start, particularly, for example, if you're starting in schools. Kids get the idea that they have to hand wash after the toilet, that they have to dispose of waste safely, and you're educating a whole generation when you start in schools. So I would say there's no better place to start looking at your urban challenge than in institutions. But I think largely speaking, it is a huge problem. Of course, you can't really apply the CLTS model, although I know it has been tried, where you break the town down, if it's not too enormous, into like communities, as if, and then tackle them as you would CLTS in an average community. And that might work in more informal settlements, peri-urban settings, but on the whole, I think they're often not nearly as homogenous as a rural community. Often people are coming and going, and so community pledges and so forth, like we rely on in CLTS, may not work. So we have to look at more public toilets, particularly in crowded settings, with some kind of pay-as-you-go model and pay to maintain. So it's not an easy challenge. But it's certainly a doable challenge, and there are many examples that we can borrow from different countries where urban sanitation has been tackled successfully. So I would urge you to look at some of those, and I'm happy to support you with examples if you need. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you, thank you. We have Simeon. Simeon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to always be here. And I think today, Vicky, you did do well for us. For you to bring this big resource for all these people, you should have broken these sessions into two. One for this week, another week for the other batch, so that we exhaustively have this.
Now, yes.
Yeah, because it's quite fast. And then bringing people like Dr. Bolu, bringing Opara, bringing Bioye and Chief of WASH. How are we?
It's our first sanitation program. We wanted to hit hard.
Because for me, sanitation is key. I always tell people that, okay, for those who may be meeting me for the first time, I am Simeon. I work with Partners for Development. We have had several work relationships with almost all the states that you mentioned here under the support of UNICEF, but we were not working directly on sanitation, but we're more of strengthening the water sanitation and hygiene committees, which has its component of ensuring that sanitation also flows. So Bioye is a familiar face and spirit in the sanitation and WASH sector and all the other groups. And we have had our learnings over time. And currently we are implementing a 3-year WASH project in Kano and Jigawa. And the incentives that we mentioned here are things that we have started using the learnings to be able to improve sanitation. And so the one for Kano and Jigawa is being supported by USAID for water improvement and sanitation enhancement activity in these two states. And just as they mentioned, just to confirm that for Jigawa, which is working on the total sanitation for the state, the local governments we are working with had been local government without interventions, but as UNICEF, with the support with the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, are now working on that. So there is already synergy. And I think that is key. Gone are the days where people work in silos and think that they can provide all the solutions. And for us, Partners for Development is an international NGO, but it's 100% Nigerian. So what that means is from the management top down, we are all Nigerians. So we are familiar with this terrain and all that. Under the UNICEF project, we have like 11 states we work on and Katsina happened to be one of them, Bauchi and all the others. Jigawa is also enjoying this particular one. And so it's just for us to get encouraged that these incentives, the local solutions are there, where there are models where households are encouraged to come into clusters to do savings as little as 50, 100 naira per week and meet for the purpose of having that money together to do a sanitation facility for each household, and you pay back the money in the different models. These are models that have been tested and they are working. I know UNICEF is also familiar. It's also championing this sanitation financing, which we had a meeting with some other of UNICEF colleagues in Adamawa and Yola, Yola, where we had those discussions. So there are things that are workable. There are things that we look inward, we should be able to solve these problems of sanitation. And for this, Kano and Jigawa are providing water in communities, in institutions, and in health centers, water, sanitation, and hygiene. And then for sustainability and for scale of economy of scale, we'll be working with 8 CSOs and the local government, the RUWASA, and the WASH community structures, so that at the end, when we are not there, they are still there to be able to do this. We did this 4 years ago in Abia and Cross River, and several organizations, external, have done assessment, and these structures are still there. The water is still running. People are using this. At least 79% of these are still operational. What that means is that it's workable. So it's to encourage all of us practitioners to network, to collaborate without this idea of competition. We're not competing with anyone. If Nigeria is good, everyone is good. And so it's to encourage each and every one of us here to be on board and to be able to contribute our quota. And it's good to have Chief sit in all this while from the beginning, and Bioye and the rest. Not because of that, but you heard when she says shit, I say, this is a real chief that is talking sanitation and is shit. You know, in this business, my first presentation in my head, I mentioned shit. And someone said, no, why do you call shit? I say, here in Nigeria, we call it shit. So the defecation thing, for people to be able to get disgusted and stop the open defecation. So thank you once again for creating this platform and for the wonderful presenters. I know you will always share these recordings and the rest, so that we, from time to time, we'll go back to it and be able to some of these things across. Okay. So I greet you from the state of Kano, although I'm based in the office in Abuja, but I'm in the field, as we can see. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We depend on guys like you in the field, you know, boots on ground people to get things going. So we are coming to a close because it's now 1:02. 2 items that stood out for me as we were speaking is, you know, for a long time now, we've been dealing with water as if it was separate from sanitation. We've not been engaging in integrated approach. Even though we keep saying wash, 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 but we have not been engaging in integrated approach. And I think that is significantly visible in this. Once we announced this program, the people we have are mostly sanitation people. We don't have the water people here. And when we've dealt with water utility issues, you know, or dealt with the governance and institutional development issues in the water sector, we've had mostly the water people and not the sanitation. And we know that we cannot have a full sanitation without water, and that ending open defecation is helpful right now, but moving it towards sanitation, we're going to need water. So it was quite apparent to me that we didn't have our water people here the way we normally would have in our previous sessions. And then I also noticed that as we talk about the engagements, especially for behavioral change, I didn't hear mention the idea of using the social media. Nowadays, the social media has taken the place of, in Nigeria especially, social media is everything, it's the Bible. Most people would do anything the social media says. If you like, go and post online that, say, if you pour water outside overnight and drink it the next day, your ulcer will be gone, and see how many people actually do it. So when we put ideas on the social media realm, it usually gets taken as God's own truth. If we are serious about, and I think that we are serious, as we are serious about ODF, let us immediately craft out a social media plan and begin to push that, because we can get our numbers off very quickly. And there is a large number of Nigerians on social media from every strata, every educational strata, every educational background, every social background, in fact, it's the in thing among the young people. And as we know, the population, Nigeria is a young population. So the easiest way to reach Nigerians is through social media. So I'm going to suggest that we take that into consideration seriously in terms of our programming. If you notice, we've been broadcasting this on Facebook Live. We would like to do a program where we are actually doing the implementation of strategies or just sharing information on open defecation through the social media platforms. And I'm going to reach out to some of you guys to help work it out so that we can carry this forward as a next step. We have such a short time between now and 2025 to get from the bottom of the class. So, everything helps, and social media definitely is the way to go to improve our numbers, as it were. There we can actually reach out, we can count how many people we're reaching, we can track their performance, we can go back and see if anything has changed in how they are working. Then the state level, it's also the same thing as the water sector. The water sector, most of the ideas, most of the programs, most of the laws and policies come from the federal level, and then the federal level finds itself having to sell it to the state level. I'm wondering if we can actually engage in some sort of a program where it becomes bottom up. And again, so that it doesn't all rest on the federal level, and of course, to a great extent on the funding partners who are assisting Nigeria with various developmental programs. They bear so much weight, and if we can do anything to start to change this to become bottom up and not top down, the way things are now, we can begin to get the numbers in ODF that we need. On that note, because we're far gone, I'm going to ask everybody to turn on your camera, and we are going to take a quick picture, and then we're going to close out.